The envelope was sitting on my kitchen counter when I got home from work. Cream-colored, thick paper, gold lettering. The kind of invitation people send when they want their wedding to look more expensive than it probably is. I almost threw it away. I didn't recognize the return address. Then I saw the names. Megan Parker and Daniel Brooks. I stopped breathing. For a few seconds, I just stood there with my keys still in my hand. Daniel, my ex-boyfriend, and Megan, my best friend. Or at least, that's what she had been. 3 years earlier, those two people had destroyed the life I thought I was going to have. And now they were getting married. I slowly sat down at the kitchen table. My hands were shaking as I opened the envelope. The wedding was in 6 weeks. Then I saw something else. Under Megan's name was a small line. Celebrating with their growing family. I read it twice. Then a third time. Megan was pregnant. I laughed once. Not because anything was funny. It was the kind of laugh that escapes when your mind doesn't know what else to do. I stared at the invitation. 3 years. 3 years since Daniel had looked me in the eyes and told me he couldn't trust me. 3 years since Megan had cried in front of our friends and claimed she had only tried to protect him. 3 years since everyone decided I was the villain. I had spent years trying to forget that night. And now they had mailed me an invitation. I was about to put it back in the envelope when something fell onto the floor. A small white card. I picked it up. There was handwriting on it. Megan's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. It said, "Emily, please come. There are things Daniel still doesn't know." I stared at the words. Then I whispered, "What did you do?" For 3 years, I had believed the worst part of that story was losing Daniel. I was wrong. The worst part was knowing that the person who had betrayed me had been sitting beside me for years, smiling, hugging me, calling me her best friend, while quietly destroying my life. And somehow, after 3 years, she wanted me to walk into her wedding. She wanted me to see her pregnant. She wanted me there. The question was, why? 3 years earlier, I was 26. I lived in Columbus, Ohio, in a small apartment with cheap furniture, a noisy refrigerator, and exactly 2 things I considered priceless: my career and my relationship with Daniel. Daniel and I had been together for 4 years. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He wasn't perfect. But I loved him. He was funny, patient, ambitious, and somehow able to make me laugh when I was having the worst day imaginable. We talked about getting married someday. Not immediately. We were both trying to build our careers first. But we talked about it. We talked about a small house, a dog, maybe 2 kids. Nothing extravagant. Just a normal life. Megan knew all of it. She knew everything about me. We had met during our sophomore year of college. She was the outgoing one. I was the quiet one. She could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with 10 new friends. I usually needed 10 minutes just to decide whether I wanted to say hello. But somehow we worked. Whenever something happened in my life, Megan was the first person I called. When I got my first promotion, she was there. When my father got sick, she stayed with me at the hospital. When Daniel proposed the idea of marriage, she was the first person I told. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I'm so happy for you," she said. I believed her. That was my mistake. Because I didn't realize Megan had started looking at Daniel differently. At first, the signs were tiny. She laughed too hard at his jokes. She texted him more often. She remembered things about him that even I forgot. One night, we were all having dinner. Daniel got up to answer a phone call. Megan watched him walk away. Then she said quietly, "He's really handsome." I laughed. "Yeah, I know." She smiled. "You're lucky." I didn't think anything of it. Why would I? She was my best friend. A few weeks later, she started asking strange questions. "Does Daniel ever talk about other women?" "No." "Has he ever cheated?" "Of course not." "What if he did?" I looked at her. "Why are you asking me that?" She shrugged. "Nothing. Just wondering." I let it go. I shouldn't have. Because by then, Megan had already started building a version of my relationship that didn't exist. And I didn't know it yet. But soon, everyone else would believe her version. It started with a message. I was sitting at my desk at work when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You need to ask Daniel where he was last Friday." I stared at the message. I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, another message arrived. "He's not telling you everything." My stomach tightened. I called Daniel. He answered. "Hey, where were you Friday night?" Silence. Then he laughed nervously. "What kind of question is that? Just answer me." "I was with the guys." "Which guys?" "Why?" I didn't know what to say. The messages had made me suspicious. Daniel sounded defensive. That night, Megan came over. I showed her the texts. She immediately looked concerned. Oh, Emily. What? Maybe you should talk to Daniel. I did. And he said he was with friends. Megan looked away. That tiny movement stayed in my memory for years. What aren't you telling me? I asked. Nothing. Megan. She sighed. I just don't want to get involved. That made everything worse. What does that mean? She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I saw something. What? I don't know if I should tell you. I stood up. Tell me. She hesitated. Then she handed me her phone. There were screenshots. Messages supposedly from me. Messages suggesting I had been talking to another man. Messages that made it look like I was planning to leave Daniel. I stared at the screen. I never wrote this. Megan shook her head. I know. Then why do you have them? I don't know. Daniel came over that night. Megan was still there. He looked at me, then at the phone, then back at me. Is this true? No. Emily, I have screenshots. They're fake. Megan immediately interrupted. Daniel, maybe we should let them talk privately. He looked at her, then back at me. I trusted you. You still can. No. His voice broke. No, I can't. I grabbed his hand. Daniel, please. He pulled away. I need space. He walked out. I looked at Megan. She came toward me. I'll talk to him. I stared at her. Why would you talk to him? Because he needs someone. I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. The next morning, Daniel ended our relationship. 3 days later, Megan stopped answering my calls. Then I saw a photo. Daniel and Megan were having dinner together. She had her hand on his arm. I felt something inside me break. The woman I trusted most had become the woman sitting beside the man I loved. And somehow, I was the one everyone believed had done something wrong. I tried to defend myself. I showed Daniel everything I had. Old messages. Our conversations. Photos. Anything that proved I hadn't cheated. He wouldn't listen. You had another man. I didn't. The messages were from your account. Someone accessed my account. Who? I didn't know. That was the problem. I had no answer. Megan did. She told everyone that I had become obsessed with Daniel. She said I was trying to destroy their relationship. She cried when people asked her about it. And people believed her. Friends stopped inviting me places. One woman at work even told me, I think you need to accept that Daniel has moved on. I wanted to scream. Instead, I went home. I spent weeks questioning myself. Was I missing something? Had I somehow made Megan angry? Why would my best friend do this? Then one night, I opened an old laptop. I found a folder of archived files. And there it was. A screenshot. One of the fake messages. The timestamp didn't match the time I supposedly sent it. I checked another. Same thing. Then another. I realized something. Someone had created those screenshots. But that wasn't enough. I needed to know who. I checked my old email account. There were login notifications. One came from a device I recognized. Megan's old laptop. My heart dropped. I sat there staring at the screen. For the first time, I knew. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't an accident. Megan had framed me. I could have exposed her. I could have shown Daniel. But then I looked at the date. Almost a year had passed. Daniel was already with her. My friends had already chosen sides. I realized something painful. Even if I proved everything, I couldn't get those months back. So I made a decision. I stopped begging people to believe me. I deleted Daniel's number. I blocked Megan. And I started rebuilding my life. I didn't know it then, but that decision would change everything. The first few months were horrible. I cried at work. I cried in my car. I cried in the grocery store when I saw a couple arguing over which cereal to buy. Everything reminded me of the future I'd lost. But slowly, something changed. I started focusing on myself. I took extra classes. I applied for better positions. I stopped checking Daniel's social media. I stopped asking mutual friends about Megan. I learned how to be alone. And eventually, I became good at it. My career improved. I received a promotion. Then another. I moved into a better apartment. I made new friends. I started running. I traveled. I began to understand something. I hadn't lost my life. I had lost the version of my life that I thought I needed. 3 years passed. And then that wedding invitation arrived. I stared at Megan's handwriting. There are things Daniel still doesn't know. I almost threw it away. But something inside me said no. Not because I wanted Daniel back. Not because I wanted revenge. I wanted the truth. So I decided to go. The wedding was being held at a country club outside Columbus. I arrived alone. I wore a simple navy dress. No dramatic entrance. No revenge outfit. No plan to steal anyone's attention. I just wanted answers. Then I saw Megan. She was standing near the entrance. Pregnant. She looked at me. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled. Emily. Hi, Megan. She looked at my dress. You look good. So do you. Her hand moved over her stomach. 6 months. I see. She looked uncomfortable. Then she whispered, Daniel wants to talk to you. My heart tightened. Why? He doesn't know I invited you. I stared at her. You didn't invite me? I sent the invitation. Then why wouldn't he know? She looked away. Because he'd never agree. That was the first thing that truly scared me. What does he need to tell me? Megan's face changed. Ask him yourself. She walked away. A few minutes later, Daniel appeared. He looked older. Not bad. Just different. He stopped several feet away. Hi, Emily. Hi. Neither of us knew what to say. Finally, he said, I think I owe you an apology. I crossed my arms. For what? He looked down. For believing a story without knowing the whole truth. My heart started beating faster. Daniel, I've been questioning things for a while. Why? He looked at me. Because Megan's story doesn't make sense anymore. Daniel and I met at a coffee shop the following afternoon. He brought a folder. He placed it on the table. I found this. Inside were old messages. Messages from Megan. Messages I had never seen. One of them said, Emily doesn't deserve you. Another said, if you knew what she was really like, you would leave her. I looked at him. Why didn't you show me these? I didn't have them then. He explained that Megan had recently admitted she had deleted some old conversations. That had made him suspicious. Then he discovered something else. A former friend remembered seeing Megan using my laptop during a visit. I felt sick. She planned everything. Daniel nodded. I think she did. I looked out the window. 3 years earlier, I had dreamed about hearing those words. Now that they were finally being said, they didn't feel as satisfying as I thought they would. Daniel reached across the table. I'm sorry. I pulled my hand away. I wanted you to believe me then. I know. You didn't. I know. You chose her. His eyes filled with tears. I know. Silence. Then he whispered, I never stopped loving you. I looked at him. 3 years ago, that sentence would have changed my entire life. Now, it didn't. I loved you too, I said. But I don't know if I love the man who believed that story. He looked down. I stood up. Daniel, I'm glad you finally know the truth. Is that all? For now. I walked away. But when I reached my car, my phone rang. Megan. I answered. What? Her voice was cold. You need to stay away from Daniel. I laughed softly. You invited me. I made a mistake. No, Megan. I paused. You made several. Megan showed up at my office 2 days later. She was angry. You always wanted him. I stared at her. He was my boyfriend. You knew what I felt. I didn't. You should have. I shook my head. No. You should have told me. She crossed her arms. You had everything. What did I have? Daniel. Your career. Your family. Your life. And you thought stealing it would make you happy? She didn't answer. I looked at her stomach. You don't have to destroy someone else's life to build your own. She looked away. Then she whispered, Daniel was going to leave you anyway. Did he tell you that? No. So you decided for him. She became quiet. That silence told me everything. I said, why did you frame me? Her eyes filled with tears. Because I knew you'd always win. I didn't understand. You were better than me at everything. That's not true. It is. She wiped her face. I thought if Daniel saw you as a bad person, he would finally see me. I felt sadness more than anger. You could have just been my friend. I didn't know how. That was the saddest thing she had ever said. But I wasn't responsible for fixing her. She stood up. You think you've won. I shook my head. This isn't a competition. She stared at me. Then she said, you don't know what Daniel is going to do. And walked out. The next morning, Daniel called. The wedding is still happening. I wasn't surprised. Okay. But I'm not sure anymore. That's your decision. I need to tell you something. What? Megan is pregnant. I know. I don't know if the baby is mine. I froze. Daniel explained that Megan had recently admitted she had lied about the timing of their relationship. There were inconsistencies. He wasn't accusing her of cheating. He simply didn't know the truth. And that uncertainty was destroying him. I told him, you need to handle that yourself. I know. I don't want to be part of that. I understand. But I also knew something else. The story wasn't finished. Daniel eventually requested a paternity test. The result confirmed the baby was his. That changed the situation. Megan was still carrying his child. But their relationship had been built on lies. Daniel had to decide whether a wedding could survive that. A week later, he called me. The wedding is canceled. I closed my eyes. Daniel, I know what you're going to say. What? That this isn't your problem. I smiled sadly. You're learning. Daniel confronted Megan. She finally admitted most of what she had done. She had accessed Emily's account. She had created false screenshots. She had encouraged Daniel to distrust Emily. She had told mutual friends that Emily was cheating. She had even encouraged Emily to believe Daniel was already moving on. Everything had been calculated. But there was one thing Megan hadn't expected. She had forgotten about an old cloud backup. The original messages were still there. The timestamps proved Emily had never sent them. The evidence was undeniable. Daniel sat across from Megan and asked, "Why?" Megan cried, "Because I wanted your life." He shook his head. "You wanted Emily's life." She didn't answer. "No," he continued. "You wanted what you thought she had." Megan looked at him. "And now?" Daniel sighed. "Now I don't know what I have." That was the moment everything finally collapsed. Not because Emily had taken revenge. Not because she had exposed Megan publicly. The truth had simply become impossible to hide. On the morning of the wedding, Daniel stood in front of Megan's family. He told them the truth. There would be no wedding. Megan blamed Emily. "You did this." Emily shook her head. "I didn't. You always wanted him." "No." Emily looked at Daniel. "She did this to herself." Megan started crying. "You don't understand." Emily's voice remained calm. "I understand more than you think." Megan looked at her. "I lost everything because of you." Emily shook her head. "No." She paused. "You lost the people you lied to." The room became silent. Daniel turned to Emily. "I'm sorry." She nodded. "I know. I should have trusted you." "Yes." "I should have listened." "Yes." "Can you forgive me?" Emily took a breath. "I can forgive you." Daniel looked hopeful. "But forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting." His face fell. "I know. And it isn't the same as going back." He nodded. For the first time, Daniel understood. He had wanted Emily to return to the woman she had been. But that woman no longer existed. 6 months later, I sat in my apartment with a cup of coffee and looked through an old box. Inside was the wedding invitation. Megan's wedding invitation. The one that had changed everything. I thought about the woman I had been 3 years earlier. She had believed losing Daniel meant losing her future. She had believed Megan's betrayal meant she wasn't enough. She had believed being misunderstood meant she needed to prove herself to everyone. I didn't believe those things anymore. Daniel and I eventually became friendly. Not lovers. Not enemies. Just two people who had once loved each other and had learned painful lessons. Megan gave birth to her daughter. I never became part of their family. And I didn't need to. My life had moved forward. My career was stronger. My friendships were healthier. I trusted myself more. Most importantly, I no longer needed someone else to choose me. I had finally chosen myself. I folded the invitation and placed it back in the box. Then I smiled. 3 years earlier, I thought Megan had stolen my future. She hadn't. She had only stolen a version of it. And losing that version had forced me to build something better. Something that belonged entirely to me. I stood by the window and watched the sun set over Columbus. For years, I had wondered why the people who hurt us sometimes seemed to get everything they wanted. Now I understood. Justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes justice is waking up one morning and realizing the people who broke your heart no longer control it. And sometimes the best ending isn't getting the person who left you back. Sometimes it's becoming the person you never thought you could be. And that was the life I chose.